This is Visionary Ventures Productions presents Ideas Between Us. This is my vlogging channel. This is my channel where you can see my ring light in the in my glasses. I wanted to talk about two topics, and then I discovered that I discovered an interesting video called Cadets that I thought maybe you might be interested in after this video. But there's two separate topics. Sorry. I want to because the monkey here is showing up where the chat is. I won't be able to see any chats, but I wanted to talk about some things that have been on my mind that in the past week. Let me start off. You might hear me um, meander a little bit. I'll try to stay focused. It's not rambling. It's not meandering necessarily. It'll be just me adding in connected thoughts. Okay. So to start off, I tried hooking up I've got my, this is really awkward. I've got my iPhone 8 there hooked up to my ring light. And if anybody has, let's see it, emergency, set up for emergency call. Okay. That's where I am right now. I wasn't able to successfully get the sound quality where I think it should be because it came out very quietly. And this is a topic that I wanted to talk about that was too important to risk having low sound quality or bad sound quality. So I'm doing it the old fashioned way. Okay. Second thing is, I guess what sparked it off was this other YouTube channel I watch. Yeah, I'm going to be doing this because I'm leaning forward on and resting my hand on a desk. But um, there's this other YouTube channel where the YouTube, and I won't reveal gender. The YouTube channel host talks about what's going on in the host's life and so forth, and various other things in the host's life. And sometimes talks about what's on the host's mind. And what especially struck me was some videos where the host was talking about um, how frustrating it can be in life and not having a centered grounding growing up. So I I felt so much sympathy and so much empathy. I don't know the difference between sympathy and empathy, but that's another discussion. Um, I um, I gave some comments I gave a comment below, and the host actually responded and thanked me. But I wanted to go further and make a video about how I had been in a brought up in a grounded, solid structure, solid sense of myself here, solid sense of myself um, growing up. And then it was after that reality hit and so forth. So let me take you back to the beginning. God created the heavens and the earth. No, no, no. It's a joke. Um, right. Okay. Um, if I can't become famous for this, I'll be famous perhaps as a lol cow. I don't know. I don't think I'd qualify as a lol cow. I'm too integrated and too self aware to be a lol cow. um, all right, enough with that. My mom um, devoted a lot of time to me growing up. She spent a lot of time with me early on, being around me, being near me. Um, and I was very artistic at the beginning. This is kind of a tutorial. I meant this to be kind of a tutorial for those who are in this YouTube hosts spot, wondering what changed, how they can regain their sense of self. So I'll tell you my story. I'll share with you my story. Um, 19, I don't remember much before that. I remember the very beginning, around age 5 or 6. Um, my memories are more clear, more vivid. I remember drawing. I remember watching television. I remember The Muppet Show and I Dream of Jeannie. This is when I was in Winnipeg with my mom. Um, and there was a mentality like I didn't know not to do something. Like I didn't know about, you can't do this or you can't do that. Obviously, walking in the middle of the street or something, you'd be hit by a car. But I didn't have um anybody telling me I couldn't do something. So my mom was always nearby. And I let those things flourish. She just enjoyed when I shared my creations, and that was true all the way through, like, high school and college and throughout our lives together. Um, I began, let me see, before I was really writing. I mean, I must have been writing it back then, but I attribute writing fictional stories to, um, developing beyond what I saw on television. I remember, the Bugs Bunny one of the Bugs Bunny series, was the one where they would say, "The overture's about to start. You cross your fingers and hold your heart." Okay, that's probably about as much as YouTube will let me sing. Uh, I remember The Muppet Show, and I remember, Mr. Dress Up. All these shows, and I Dream of Jeannie, and Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, and something with David Suzuki. I don't remember, some science show with David Suzuki. Um, I remember those shows, and wouldn't um I wouldn't just sit there blindly. I remember actively following the storylines. Like, for example, hypothetically, I would watch an episode of I Dream of Jeannie, and I would take a look at the visual arrangements. I would keep in mind the characters involved. And I probably even back then had a sense that this is the main goal of the protagonist character. There was I didn't know about protagonist or antagonist or whatever at the time, but I probably had some sense that Genie messed things up, and somebody is going through conflict and is trying to get it resolved, trying to resolve it. And I didn't have a sense of evil or a sense that somebody was just dastardly evil. In fact, I kind of cringed about that. I remember Pinocchio early on. I remember having a Golden Books edition of Snow White and Disney Snow White, and I think it was Disney Snow White, probably was Disney's. And I sort of remember Pinocchio going way back that far, and I didn't think of conflict as being a bad guy. I thought of it as motivation, I believe, even back then, that somebody had some motivation to go after, some kind of goal, and it conflicted with the characters that we follow and we, sympathize with. So that's how I would have understood it back then. Okay, so I guess I beat that topic to death. So I didn't think of it as good versus evil. I would think of it as conflict, um, which makes me sad now because I understood it way back then, and I was so prepared to go into the TV and film industry, and that's what I'm going to lead up to in this talk, what I was thinking about this past week. Um, so I was also drawing. What was I drawing? I don't remember what I was drawing, but I remember my art was good. I remember comic strips. I remember Sunday comics. Um, and I remember like drawing scenarios like like sequences in a comic book. And then around, let me see, hi, let's jump to sixth grade. Where fifth grade. I was watching. Oh, actually, third and fourth grade. So that was first grade. Third and fourth grade. I was interested in Transformers. What was my upbringing like? My mom showed an active interest in what I was playing with, like for Transformers. I asked her to go out and get a Transformer because I was envious of these other kids who had Transformers toys. And she said that, well, she came back with Prowl, who happened to be the Autobot next in line right under the leader, Optimus Prime. And she said that when she was looking through, the other one seemed more destructive, and here was a police car. And I don't know if she read the tech specs on the back of the box, but Prowl is described as a military strategist and very smart and clever and logistical, so forth. Obviously, being a strategist. So I grew up on Transformers partly, um, and that helped me with my imagination. I'm sure of it. She also got me right about that same time. Um, I was interested in Return of the Jedi. The movie Return of the Jedi had just come out, relatively speaking, just come out, and or is recent in people's minds. And I had um, I had bonded with Luke Skywalker. Now, I wanted to mention actually some role models, but I guess this supersedes it. I wanted to make a video originally about role models, talking about my own role models. So let's talk about my role models early on. The Christopher Reeve live action Superman movies. Maybe there were two at the time. I know there was at least one, and I knew of Superman, and I associated Christopher Reeve with playing Superman. So I wasn't really reading the comic books. I wasn't reading the comic books at all, but I just knew of Superman, Christopher Reeve movie Superman. Um, so I thought of truth and justice in the American way, and especially justice. And of course, I didn't know I was Jewish until later on, but justice is an important part of Judaism and Jewish culture. So my mom was fairly content. I mean, I had time to myself. I had a lot of time to myself, and my mom would do her thing, and she would occasionally go to the grocery store and come back with food. And I would have my playroom in what she called the linoleum room. This is back in Winnipeg. See, I'm jumping a little bit there. And I remember setting up some tape to make a three-dimensional floor plan of the school. And I intended to show her. This was probably around the first day of school, and I wanted to show her through this three-dimensional map what happened during that day, like a particular day. If I wanted to go over and show her something, this is how my mind was working at the time. Um, so I remember showing her, and I don't really remember showing her, days down the line what happened. I just created it that first day, and I remember talking with her a lot about the moon and probably some elements of science. And we would go different places, probably to the fair, places I haven't remembered now. And I remember possibly going to the beach that early. I certainly was going to the beach with her um, later on in second and third grade. possibly 4th grade. No, no, not 4th grade, 2nd and 3rd grade, most likely. Um, and enjoying swimming. I loved swimming. Um, and see, she took me to places that she knew that I enjoyed doing activities, and she enrolled me in Boy Scouts later on, like Cub Scout, Weeblos, whatever it was, the stage before Boy Scouts. I think it was Wolf Pack or something, whatever it is. I mean, technicality, maybe Wolf Pack is not part of Cub Scouts or something, whatever. But um, one of those groups, um, probably because she was looking out for me to socialize, ways for me to socialize. But she was interested in Transformers because I was interested in Transformers, and she wanted to encourage me, I think. She was happy that I was interested in this creative thing called Transformers, and there was more to it. I hadn't been watching because we didn't have cable. I hadn't been watching the cartoon series, um, unlike the other kids in my class. Um, but by then, I was already interested. I already was watching lots of imaginative TV shows, and it says something about my taste and interest in how my upbringing grew based on what I was watching. I enjoyed, aside from sitcoms like Three's Company and Different Strokes and regular sitcoms, Silver Spoons, I remember enjoying a lot of things like Misfits of Science, although that was 85, I believe. Um, Magic and the supernatural and imaginative, basically imaginative storytelling. And my mom would enjoy, and I felt that I could go up to my mom and just share whatever was on my mind. That's a key thing. It may sound cliche, it may sound subtle. I mean, it may sound nonchalant, something like that. May sound mundane, um, but I could just go up to her. She would usually be sitting down in the chair watching something or reading something or whatever. And throughout our lives together, up until her death, I could go up to her and just say, "Mom, I wanted to. I was just reading something, and I wanted to share it with you. A new idea I had." And she would always put down her book or whatever she was doing, and she would listen to me. She wouldn't just say, "Uh-huh, that's okay. That's nice, Jeff." She would actually stop what she was doing, and she may say like, "Okay, hold on, let me pause this or something, or mute this or something." But I mean, that was later, years later on. But she would actually talk to me and interact with me. And I remember we would be on the bus together because she didn't drive a car. We would we would take the bus together, and it was an outing. Um, and we would talk freely on the bus. I remember um, by this point I had watched, so this must have been like 1986. So it would have been probably 5th grade, 6th grade, something like that. Um, I was with my mom on the bus, and maybe it was the episode Arise Atlantis Arise. It was some episode of Transformers, and I was reciting the entire episode from memory. And the other people on the bus, I sort of remember my mom telling me this later on. I vaguely remember doing it, but the other people on the bus were intently listening. And that's one of the talents, I believe that everybody begins with pretty much a clean slate, and you must let your passions thrive and grow and flourish and glow. Um, so that's what happened with me. Obviously, these passions were varied, but they were television and storytelling. Television is just a medium, it's a technology, but basically it's creative people. And even back then, I didn't think about Hollywood so much. I didn't think about the industry, but even when I was watching television, very little, like Mr. Dress Up or Three's Company or something, I didn't think that they were real. I thought of them as actors portraying this story, and the story had, like, for example, I'm just hypothetically, I'm thinking of a Three's Company episode. Um, Probably like first grade, I would have, or I Dream of Jeannie, I would have thought of it as something written by somebody, some kind of force, like some kind of intelligence written by somebody. I mean, sorry, let me say that again. Some kind of intelligent force behind the scenes writing the story, and these characters um, are demonstrating or portraying their roles in the story and their camera angles and so forth. So that's where I was. That would have been my mentality around first grade and a little bit before that. And then second grade and third grade, I kept with that. And then it was in middle school where I began, really, not that I wasn't writing stories before, but I know by that point I was started to write scripts myself, and they were short scripts. But I began writing, and I continued with drawing, and I continued with this close friendship with my mom. Um, what other aspects of my life? How did I react? Let me talk about friendships. I had a my first real close friendship I had was with somebody essentially down the street. I mean, it's not literally on the same street, but like you cross the street and then you go down a street and you go over to a cross street. So it's essentially down the street. And he also enjoyed Transformers, and we would talk. I've talked about this before, how philosophical and adult our conversations were, not only about, not exclusively about Transformers, um, but about life and things that were going on in our lives. Um, Voltron, and I can't really think of anything in particular. He would say, we would talk on the phone sometimes. I'd go over to his house. We probably talked on the phone more often than I went over to his house, because I remember going over to his house to visit was a big treat for me, big thrill. So we probably just talked on the phone, and he said that his parents didn't let him go visit our apartment complex because of something with a family member, not related to me, but just um, horrible thing or bad experience at the apartment complex with another, happened to another family member. Um, but I could go over there and visit, and maybe it's just as well because his house had more stuff. Um, so, well, I can't think of any. Nothing comes to mind right now, but I um, I remember talking. I remember we would just talk philosophically, and I keep saying philosophically because I can't quite pin down what we talked about. But it was close to the extent that we could trust each other. With that, that's it. We could trust each other. We were open. We were both open minded, and um, in fact, I'm so glad that even today, I still have that relationship with him. Um, Let me see what else. All right, I guess I've told you about my upbringing on different facets. I'm going through. Let me go through some notes here. You can't see this. Going through some notes. There were some. Okay, back to role models. Besides Superman, Pinocchio, Jiminy Cricket, Let Your Conscience Be Your Guide. I kept that in mind. I kept Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, not A New Hope, but Return of the Jedi, where he he expressed no spoiler alert here. Um, Let me just say that he expressed unwavering devotion to his family, and he had optimism. And I think that carried over to another role model that I had. If you could call it a role model, I don't like the term role model because it sounds like trying to copy, you're trying to model yourself after this other person. I wasn't trying to do that. It's more like I need a term for a character, either fictional or real in real life, that exhibited traits that I respected and I valued as well. So there was Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi for having unwavering devotion to making things right, making things just, fixing something, no matter what the cost. And that ties over into James Kirk in Star Trek. Same values, probably the same values as the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. Um, Honesty, sincerity, being genuine with everybody, um, optimism, constructive attitude. Um, so I was never told not to have those beliefs. That's the proper life you should have. Um, it's a healthy life. I've wondered later on why people do things that they wonder why they did them or whatever. Um, Maybe you've heard this, that that people do stupid things or they do mean things to people when they're hurt or whatever. Um, I don't see I don't see a moment when I've done that. I mean, to some extent, at least meaningful, intentionally. I don't. I can't think of a moment when I've done that intentionally. Um, so let me see. So the advice that I gave to this person, this YouTube um, host, was to take some time to rest, to meditate. Number one, um, keep focus and remember the passion that you have, the passions you have in life. Like in my instance, for example, drawing and being creative and writing and so forth. And you'll see why this seems to be a double-edged sword. And just believe in yourself and continue doing it despite what other people think, other people's criticisms. However, uh, always think that you can. Let me rephrase this. I was going to say, always think you can do it better. No, no, no. Be on the road to improving yourself and improving your skills. Um, Let me see. And I also said that there are idiots out there. Um, it's just a truism I developed. Not to put people down. By idiots, I mean people who don't think, who aren't self-aware, aren't aware of other people, aren't aware of their impact on other people, and just make stupid decisions, careless decisions without regard to how it affects anybody else. That's what I mean by, there are idiots out there. Um, some people just don't understand. No matter how much you try to explain things, they just won't understand. They're either closed-minded or they don't want to bother trying to figure out what you're talking about or whatever. They're idiots. They're like idiots. I don't just that's I guess just a term I didn't come up with the term idiot. That's just a term I adopted because that's all it really that's all that's really worth, um, that's all the time that's really worth, thinking about it. Um, you don't spend too much time trying to figure out why they did it, what they did, whatever. At some level, just they're idiots, and I can only hope that they learn to develop and improve upon themselves. So, I think that was it. I can't think of other. Let me in an attempt to be more thorough. Um, okay, so you're probably anxious for me to move on to the next topic. So where does that take me? Okay, so then after college, reality hit, and this is where it's the double-edged sword, and goes back to that YouTube host. YouTube host is frustrated, sometimes expressing frustration about life and being stuck and not being able to move forward. And I can truly, genuinely understand that. I felt really frustrated, especially as of late. Um, uh, I'll just be frank with you, okay, now that you know where I came from, this past week, I felt really down sometimes, really depressed. Um I set up boy, I wish I could have recorded all this yesterday. I wanted to talk with my therapist. Of course, my therapist appointment wouldn't be until this morning, and then it was canceled and rescheduled. But this is like real time here, real moment, mind to mind, just between the two of us. Um, I have felt stuck for a long time. I thought I planned early on in elementary school. I didn't have much contact with other kids in the class, but I thought that um, I wasn't trying to compare myself to others. I'm just saying that I was so enthusiastic about where my life would lead. In other words, I just knew, like I was breathing, like I just knew I wanted to go into writing professionally for television. Film wasn't as big a thing in my life. I mean, no, let me strike that. My plans for my future weren't it didn't involve film so much. It was much more in terms of television and writing for favorite television shows. See, I wasn't thinking about television down the line because I didn't know what television would be down the line, but I knew the favorite television shows I would watch at the time, and I was so eager to get into television that even though I knew I had to finish high school at least, and then I was thinking, of course, obviously go to college. Like it was drilled in. Like I mean, I don't want to say it was drilled in. My mom never. At that point, my mom didn't like insist I go to college. It was more a matter of shows like the Dick Van Dyke Show and Silver Spoons, and it just seemed a natural course of events that I grow up and I go to college, preferably in Los Angeles. I just like Los Angeles, meaning Southern California or wherever, just in the film industry or the TV industry rather. And just like the Dick Van Dyke Show, if watch that, you'll know what I mean. Rob Petrie worked in as a writer, working writer, um, in for a television show. Something like Your Show of Shows, which nobody knows about. Sid Caesar's Your Show of Shows. It was modeled after that. But think about Carol Burnett and Friends and other skit shows like Saturday Night Live. Basically, think Saturday Night Live only back then. It was a fictional sitcom, but it's interesting. It was like he was it was this fictional sitcom about somebody who was a head writer of a Saturday Night Live type of show. very good writing, excellent writing. So I thought of that, and he went to college, and these other people, these other characters in TV, and my mom had gone to college, and it would just seemed the norm, go to college after high school. So, but I wanted to. I was so eager to get stuff written and produced. And I had been a fan of Star Trek. I don't want to say fan. That's short for fanatic. Star Trek was one of my favorite shows and one of my passions. Um, and a lot of my creativity was channeled through that. Um, and nobody told me no. Nobody said, "Oh, that's poppycock." I was just I just let it continue. There's a phone I guess I can call back and find out. Um, I hope that's not a job thing. I can call back. Um, in fact, here, let me. Okay, I'm going to call back. Okay, some sense right now this is more important. So, um, at the end, so I went to college in locally, and then after that was when reality hit. Um, and that's when I just began to feel stuck. And um, even though I didn't know, I sort of knew about my extended family at the time, but it was just my mom. My dad had stopped visiting. He only visited like a handful of times. Um, and I felt very lonely. And that's where the sadness started to come in. And that's where my Madonna nostalgia, something attraction came in. And I felt so I can understand this YouTube host feeling frustrated and trapped and isolated. And then over time, as I've gone through job after job and struggling and going through periods without even having a job, I haven't had a job that paid more than $22 an hour. And I remember, to give you some sense, excuse me, I feel a sneeze coming up. Um, sorry for cracking your ears, America. So, or wherever you are. I took that from Tom Snyder. He said, "Excuse me for sneezing in your face, America." He- it's one of my favorite lines. Well, it was just improv. He just sneezed and he said, "Excuse me for coughing in your face, America." Um. Anyway, he. Let me see. Where was I? I forgot where I was going. Somewhere in college. Or after college. To give you some context, the first job that I had was um, fixing up a website and then doing like menial tasks for somebody who owned a company. I think he was running it by himself. It was a mail and parcel company um, nearby, and I was getting 10. Was it $5? I was getting like minimum wage, if that. And then he had to let me go because there was I probably because there was no he couldn't afford to I think he was selling off. He made a joking remark to somebody, "Hey, do you want to sell? You want to buy a company business?" And then I had some small experience working a day or whatever at various places, and I remember a um local fast food restaurant. Don't want to give the name, but famous locally. Sells hot dogs. That might give you a hint. Um, I worked there for a few. I remember during the summer for a few weeks. I remember something like 2 weeks, and it was minimum wage there, and they just let me go just because there was never really an explanation. Just we decide to let you go. I Okay. I never questioned it. Maybe I know one friend of mine has said he's pissed off that they didn't give me an answer. They didn't keep. I don't know. But in my experience, I figured, okay, I guess you don't want me. Better find some other job. And then I worked at CNN. I got a job as an overnight baker for 2 days, and I didn't like it. So I'm glad actually that the person got rid of me. Um, and I don't remember what I was making. It was like would have been like $5 an hour or something. And then I got a job in at CNN International, and I remember the salary was 20,410 or something like that, and wow, that was a huge. It was like a big salary. I guess salary means something technically different. I guess you were paid. I don't remember whether it was a salary or hourly pay, but whatever it is, I added it up, and it would be yearly. It would be 20,410, something like that, or 310. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough food to last some days, so I just wouldn't go without. I would go without eating some days, and I remember my stomach would get sick after a while, and I didn't have it. It wasn't a good foundation for me, and so after a month, they let me go. So I came home, and it's just been like that. I spent like 11 years and 7 months in an insurance agency. In the 7 months included a when the agency was kind of bought out. At least the customers were transferred over to this other agency, and they kept us on that other agency for a little while. And I don't know entirely what was going on behind the scenes, but um, I was let go there, and then eventually the other people were let go too individually. It's nice, reassuring to know that I wasn't the only one, really. Um, so there, I let out some more, so you have some more awareness of where I'm coming from, and I'm really ambitious. In college and before college, the 1992 presidential campaign between Clinton, Bush, and uh, Perot. Many of you don't know that Perot was a third, candidate there. Um, and that was coming up towards the first time I could vote. I could legally vote, so I wasn't out of age yet to be able to vote. But that really interested me. That intrigued me enough. I read through the various presidents using my World Book Encyclopedia set. I read through the presidents going back to Franklin Roosevelt, which is really where I think the 20th century began with his New Deal programs, and a lot of the structure that we have really started. I think of as having started with FDR. Um, and I read through all of them, just personally interested. That's another thing that about me. I was just fascinated by whatever I was fascinated by, whether it be physics, like theoretical physics, or let me see what else, or um, movie industry or TV industry, or I'm trying to say more because I was interested more than just those things. I remember enjoying Mad Magazine. I just whatever I came across that piqued my magic, stage illusions, and so forth. I would absorb. I would read as much as I could about it, and just watch whatever documentaries, whatever there was about it. And I was smart, and I would integrate it together. And I have a sharp memory, and I would, I would recall these things easily, and creative mind, and so forth. So I went in with that attitude, and that pretension, that not pretension, that that those instincts. I went in with those instincts, and learned all about these presidents from FDR all the way through. And of course, Clinton was the would eventually Clinton was elected, and but before that, Reagan was the encyclopedia set came out with Reagan while Reagan was president. So ended with Reagan and Bush. I didn't really know. I just, but I didn't have much information. And then I was learning about Clinton while he was going through the motions of being president. So that was an interesting aspect of the education I got. I learned about these past former presidents, what they did, um, and alongside that, I was following what President Clinton was doing. That was back when I was really interested in politics, and I in college, of course, that was during Clinton's first and really going into his second term. Um, I thought about Star Trek, and that was one of the things that I infused into my interest in politics. Um, how could you help to spur on this kind of utopian society? This society, could it really exist in real life? That's depicted in Star Trek, where races of all types work together, cooperate with each other. Like during World War II, you had blacks and whites working side by side, and to the extent that maybe that for many people, maybe in the South, or maybe just in poor areas, maybe that was the first time that um, a white guy, a white Southerner, met up with like Gomer Pyle or something or other, or I'll use a maybe more apt term, maybe Private Hargrove. Those of you who know what I'm talking about, I'd be very amazed. But or Private Hargrove. Anyway, um, met a black guy, and I think it really helped the military. It really helped integration, and eventually integration in society in general between blacks and whites, and civil rights and so forth. It's interesting. 20 years after World War II, you get civil rights marches and so forth, where blacks are, where there's some kind of effort to like build a society, a racially equal society. And Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., so forth. Um, so could you kind of socially engineer something like Star Trek? Oh, going back to Star Trek. Um, so in addition to a racial, these races working together, um, by that I mean human races. You got Russians, you got Americans. Uhura was from Africa, United States of Africa, and Kirk was from the United States, and Spock was an alien, and Sulu was an Asian. So, and then you had like an Indian here somewhere, a Native American, and you had Scotsmen and Irishmen and so forth, all around the world working together toward a common cause. And constructed, not only that, but a constructive purpose, constructive sense of purpose. And I didn't grow up in the 1960s, but my mom would probably characterize that time period as more hopeful, more constructive, more proactive. Is the best word I should say. I should use more proactive in terms of fixing the wrongs, the social ills of society, and building a better society, and looking towards the future. And I grew up in the 70s. I vaguely remember the 70s. Really, I spent my conscious childhood in the 1980s, which perhaps is very, very different. Different attitude. And so I want there to be socially engineered a society like Star Trek. And um, a lot of what I wanted to do as president was to socially engineer, and create a very prosperous, engineer a very prosperous country, very prosperous time where I would invest in um, research and development, military innovations, scientific innovations, NASA. My theme would be raise quality of life. that, like Clinton had, its economies, healthcare, education, healthcare, and the environment and so forth, and don't forget the economy, and it's the economy stupid. Um, I my slogan would have been raise quality of life in various aspects. Raise quality, physical quality of life, technology. I wanted to call it an era of technology unchained. And these are all things I came up with at the time, like during my college years. I wanted it to be a period of technology unchained, where you're not technological development is not constrained at all. It can, as those of you who know Star Trek or have some little inkling of Star Trek, there's so much remarkable technology. They were able to find ways of feeding the poor. They were able to find ways of going out into space and exploring. They were just going out into space and exploring, that would have an incredible psychological impact on the society, because they know, there's more to the universe than just their little world or their little country or whatever. And having having nations working together, and raise physical quality of life, raise the economic quality of life, living standards, financial standards. Um, and I've mentioned this before in earlier videos, what I would do as president. My campaign theme song, actually, I had two. I had one called, which was, what was the song? Everybody Wants to Rule the World. But now that I know what the song is actually speaking about, that's not an idea for a campaign song. And even though it's a nice song, and it would seem presumptuous and pretentious and you know, egotistical or whatever, self-centered. So it would be "Let the River Run," which was the song that was played. It's sung by Carly Simon, um, played in the movie Working Girl. Let the river run, let all the dreamers wake the nation. Come, the New Jerusalem, silver cities rise, the morning lights, the streets that greet them. Come, the New Jerusalem. Um, and that's what I imagined. And I had this, I imagined this bright future. And I want to talk about my extended family, because I did feel some kind of tinge last night. I was talking with my girlfriend, and I don't want to get into details. I just have felt some sense of separation, which thankfully it's moved beyond that, and but there was a period yesterday where um something happened, and I felt kind of irked, and I felt cut off. But fortunately, I was able to resolve that. And where do I go from here? I guess it's approaching an hour. I I want to update you on my job situation. I don't know if that call had anything to do with my jobs. There are two jobs. One is working from home, answering calls. Basically, it'd be a call center, and something I have confidence I can do because I've done it before. But that requires internet connection, and I'm right at the point where I really need an internet service. And it's like that phrase, "My kingdom for a horse." Um, if I owe $260 to Verizon. There's no question about. I mean, it's not a matter of lowering my costs, or because I did that. I took off my all my streaming service and all my cable fees and so forth. So now it's just limited to internet service and landline phone. I haven't been able to pay my iPhone bill, which is through some other company, through some other carrier. Sorry. And I did that on purpose. I kept my landline phone, just in case, and I kept my my Verizon landline service just in case, and I kept my AT&T line just in case. because if I were stuck and I couldn't pay one, I had to call Verizon. I could use AT&T in order to call Verizon, or vice versa. Well, I haven't been able to pay my AT&T bill for a while because I've been out of work, and so that's been dormant. I still have the phone. I still use, internet on the phone, and but I can't use it as a phone till I pay. Um, so it's $260, and I contacted somebody. There was a charity organization that may be able to give a loan, and they may have been the ones calling about the loan. And it's not that much money, $260 spread over some period of time. Um, there's no question about reducing that amount. That's just what I owe. And anyway, that's been my fear. So sometimes I've sat in bed, and I've laid in bed, and I still continue. I went on Facebook. I still continue trying to move along, and to be really between you and me, really. I lie in bed, and I use Claude AI quite a bit to do research and chat back and forth with it, coming up with ideas, and helping, and it helps me to formulate plans and strategies and so forth. Like, I'm strategizing, and it's helping to piece together a plan and so forth. What would be good, and it would give recommendations, um, like I said, about the modeling idea I wanna do, because my girlfriend and other people have told me that I look attractive. Um, I think I just look okay, um, but I wanna use that. I wanna be able to use that, and, that's what one thing that I liked about dressing up as Samantha, and it's not like past tense. I mean, I'd still want to continue doing it. I haven't decided to stop doing it, but I haven't done it for a long while. I felt more attractive dressing up as Samantha than I do now. But anyway, Claude AI gave recommendations for Facebook groups or Facebook posts to reply to about people in my area, photographers in my areas. And that's a follow up to something easily over a month ago, where I told Claude AI, remember um, these modeling agencies. If I do have what it takes, I want to at least make a good attempt at it. Um, and I think of Yoda's comment in Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. Almost said Star Trek by accident. God forbid. Gene Roddenberry, forgive me, or George Lucas, forgive me. Um, and we all know George Lucas is God, right? um, so it's blasphemous. Please don't take that as blasphemous. Um, so anyway, Yoda in Empire Strikes Back says, "No, there is do or do not. There is no try." So if you've heard that, that's where it comes from. Empire Strikes Back. Um, so make an attempt, or do something. Make my good. Just do it. Work. Uh, do the application, the portfolio, get pictures, and make an effort to these modeling agents. Because I've heard it from my girlfriend. Excuse me, I've heard it from my girlfriend. I've heard it from some other people occasionally in the past that I look attractive. Um, so I posted some, not just on my own Facebook page, but Claude AI noted and spotted, or identified, blah blah blah, identified certain posts of photographers looking for models in my area. So I did that, and I just lay in bed a lot of times. I do want to get exercise. I want to go to the gym. I want to go, especially I want to go swimming, and reduce this belly fat. It's weird. My body is like this well proportioned, and just around my waist it just like sags. And I've looked into something related to me receiving Medicaid through a company, so it's like managed care. It's anyway, an insurance company connected with Medicaid. So maybe there are benefits. Maybe there's some way that I could have that reduced. I There's no place around here that I could go swimming. I mean, there is within, but not within walking distance. My car was repossessed. I've looked on the website, my website, www. No, sorry, vvproductions.media, to see if anybody's bought any apparel to at least help with the Verizon cost, and nobody's bought anything. So I don't know what to do. So I feel similar to, again, that YouTube content creator. I've tried all sorts of different ways, and that's where I start thinking. When I'm thinking like this, I think of just having failed. Not that I'm a failure. I'm not a failure because I've tried and tried earnestly whatever I could come up with, whatever idea I could come up with. I figured out intelligently. I figured out a plan, and I don't know where else to go. Um, so sometimes I just feel like I failed in life. Um, and I still think of that Madonna movie I want to create. And I think about what Madonna would think of me or think of the project. And these are like conversations I would think in my mind, imagining her. There are two kinds of, I don't know if you've thought this way or had experience like this with like an imaginary friend or something. There are two kinds of conversations I've imagined in my mind. There's one that's where I express this and Madonna says, "You got to keep working," or the stuff, the material you've created is really nice and really good and skillful and so forth. And then there's another conversation I imagine where she says, "Well, you don't have what it takes," and being hard edged and so forth. And um, I know it's all in my mind, so I don't know which one is. And I shouldn't really dwell so much on what I imagine she might say. It's just really sad that maybe nobody will ever know about the movie I've had in mind. Um, it's like I have this resume, I have this aptitude for work for creating really good stuff, and I want people to see it. They deserve to see it. It deserves to be seen, and I'm feeling this pressure on myself to just stop the video and feel like I've said all that I could, but um, now is maybe especially not the time to stop recording. Um, I a little while ago, some months ago, um, I had thought about going for my master's degree, my alma mater, which is within a bus ride. Again, I don't even have money for bus rides. I'm really that low. Like I have some nickels, maybe, and a few pennies, literally in a jar, in a food jar, and it's a chocolate spread. I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But in a jar for coins. So my mom had earned a PhD, and I have this dissertation. That's what fascinates me. The Torah. I want to share with you. It's like this may be my last video I present. Whatever. Who knows what'll happen? But I have this concept of Elohim and Yud Hey Vav Hey. It's like I'm somewhat ahead of. I'm not the only one going along this line because there are other people, other biblical researchers, um, who are moving along this line. It's a refutation of the documentary hypothesis. Fortunately, that's losing steam. That documentary hypothesis losing steam. The concept that the Torah is a stitching together of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, is a stitching of different writings by different authors, all put together by a redactor or editor. I don't believe so. I suspect that they're misinterpreting what there is, and there's a lot of deeper, more there. It's a lot deeper than people give the Torah credit for. And I see Elohim. Well, anyway, in English translations, God is typically written in English, whereas in the actual text you see Elohim, and where you see the Lord typically, unless it's in a few passages where it's literally Adonai written there. Typically it's Yud He Vav He. That's the what the Greeks call tetragrammaton, the 4 letters. And of course, we aren't certain of the vowels, but Nehemiah Gordon has found convincing, persuasive evidence that it's pronounced Yehovah. So Jehovah in the actual Hebrew, because Hebrew, the Torah isn't written with vowels. But anyway, in English, where that appears, it's the Lord is just written there. So anyway, so Elohim, as I understand, I want to know my suspicion. Okay, my suspicion is that it's like, for those of you who are interested in Transformers, the quintessons, they have 5 faces, and they're beings that just switch from face to face to face to. It's like a Rubik's cube almost, like face switches to a new face, switches to a new face, and so forth. But it's the same character. So there are different facets. So that's how I like to imagine, or that's the visual thing that helps me imagine as I go through testing my thesis out as I read through the Torah in Hebrew with an English translation. But I know Hebrew. I know quite a lot of Hebrew. That Elohim is the facet of the deity that's involved with order and seeking to establish cosmic order, and that Yud He Vav He, or I would say, well, I'll just say the other facet is Yud He Vav He rather than Yehovah. Yud He Vav He is focused on justice and righteousness, tzedek. So Yud He Vav He was the one that gave the commandments, a lot of the commandments, first of all, to Moses, and then other commandments. And then Elohim was the one that gave the commandment, be fruitful, multiply, which is not a justice or righteousness related commandment. It's more like be fruitful, spill out, like just populate the earth. And that seems more like cosmic order. And associated with 2 of every, Elohim tells Noah, take 2 of every kind, male and female, onto the ark. Whereas for a moment, Yud He Vav He steps in and says, take 7 of the clean animals, or seven examples, seven of the clean animals. I guess that's what I said. So clean, that would be more in line, and kosher, for clean, read kosher animals, in line with the mitzvot about which animals you should eat and which ones you should not eat. So that's more in line with righteousness, or tzedek, or justice. Not so much justice, but like righteousness, like following the ethical commandments. And Yud He Vav He steps in, and it's the facet of the deity that's expressed during the thing with Cain and Abel. And I've talked about that in earlier things. I don't want to go into that here. Earlier videos, I don't want to belabor that here, but I can see the Torah in so many levels of depth, and it's like I feel trapped. I feel trapped in many ways. I feel Here's how I feel trapped. I feel trapped in terms of my development of female impersonation, developing my Samantha Bahar character, because nobody really responds. Nobody has time. I feel trapped. I Because I want to develop this thesis or this dissertation, PhD dissertation, and I'm trying to reach out. Like I do reach out, um, and I to other people and collaborate. I want to collaborate with people. I want to get on shows and I want to express my point of view. And that's one major reason I have this YouTube channel. It's at least something. And I want to develop those podcasts. I established the podcast. I published test I published examples, one example for each podcast show in order to create the podcast on these different things like Sirius XM. And I haven't produced episodes because, quite frankly, there probably is some element of depression in there, and sadness and just feeling trapped. And I want to really, honestly, I want to talk with Madonna. I want to share my idea for this movie. I mean, I want to share this outline for this movie. I stopped creating the movie. I stopped working on the movie and writing the outline and so forth. And I'd written some drafts before, but this is like I'm feeling that feeling that it seems the YouTube content creator I was talking about earlier expresses sometimes. Um, so so I will find out who is calling. I'll end this stream now, and I'm looking forward to Cadets. I want to play Cadets for you on YouTube, and I'll be in a commentary square in the corner, and I want to occasionally stop it and experiment. This being like my only medium to get my voice out in the world. So thanks. I'll talk with you again later. Bye.